Today, finding out who the father of a child is takes about 24 hours. A quick cheek swab, a simple lab test, and you have your answer. It is a clear, indisputable, scientific fact. It gives you a 99.9% certainty. But there is a massive catch. For 99% of human history, that technology did not exist. There were no science labs. There were no birth certificates. There were no daytime talk shows with dramatic reveals. There was only a harsh, unavoidable biological reality. Anthropologists have a specific term for it. They call it maternal certainty and paternal uncertainty. In simple, non-scientific terms, mom's baby, dad's maybe. Let's break down why this is the ultimate evolutionary asymmetry. When a woman becomes pregnant, she invests heavily. She carries the child for 9 exhausting months. She risks her life during childbirth. She provides the milk to keep the infant alive. Because of this physical process, there is absolutely zero doubt in her mind. When she holds that baby, she knows it carries her genes. But for the man standing next to her, the biological investment required to become a father can be measured in minutes. Biology offers the male no immediate, physical guarantees. No glowing sign above the baby's head. No barcode to scan. A prehistoric man simply had to take the woman's word for it. From a strictly evolutionary perspective, this is terrifying. Evolution is entirely about passing on your specific genes to the next generation. If a man spends his entire life hunting, protecting, and gathering food for a child, and that child belongs to another man, from an evolutionary standpoint, he has completely failed. He has spent his energy raising his rival's DNA. So, without DNA testing, how did ancient men figure out if the child was theirs? The short answer is, they didn't. The long answer is that human biology and society hacked the system. Let's start with the oldest and most unreliable paternity test in the book, the eye test. Humans are biologically wired to look for patterns. We search for familiar noses, eye shapes, and hair textures in our offspring. We want visual proof. But there is a major problem with this method. Newborn babies generally look like angry, wrinkled potatoes. They rarely look distinctly like any specific adult. In fact, some evolutionary biologists suggest infant faces are intentionally ambiguous. If a baby looked too obviously like a rival male, it could be dangerous for the infant. So, babies keep their features soft and generic for a while. But the human brain desperately wants reassurance. And evolutionary psychologists have noticed something deeply fascinating about this. Across almost all human cultures, a very specific pattern happens in the delivery room. When a baby is born, who is usually the first to comment on its looks? The mother's side of the family. And they almost always say the exact same thing in every language. He looks exactly like his father. He has your eyes. He has your chin. This is not just polite, friendly conversation. It is a subconscious, ancient survival strategy playing out in real time. By loudly and repeatedly declaring the physical resemblance, the mother's family is trying to reassure the male. They are aggressively signaling to him, "This is yours. Do not leave." Because a human infant is incredibly fragile. It cannot walk or feed itself for years. It requires massive amounts of continuous resources and protection. If the father doubts his genetic connection and walks away, the child's statistical chances of survival drop drastically. So the human brain forces us to see similarities where none exist. We hallucinate paternal resemblance to keep the family unit intact. But relying on a familiar nose is a terrible scientific method. It is easily fooled by biology and wishful thinking. Ancient hunter-gatherers intuitively understood this limitation. So, in many parts of the world, they took a radically different approach. What if the concept of having only one biological father is actually a modern myth? Deep in the Amazon rainforest, many indigenous tribes operate on a completely different logic. Tribes like the Bari, the Mihinaku, and the Ake. They practice a belief system called partible paternity. To Western minds, it sounds impossible, but to them, it is basic biology. They believe that a child is not created in a single, fleeting moment. Instead, they believe a fetus is built up gradually over time. They view it like building a house or molding a clay pot. It requires accumulated contributions over many months to grow the baby strong. Therefore, under this biological theory, a child does not just have one father. It can have 2, 3, or even 4 biological fathers. A woman might have a primary husband, but also other recognized partners. And when the baby is born, every single one of those men is officially recognized as the dad. They do not fight over it. They do not demand DNA tests. They share the title. To modern ears, this sounds chaotic and biologically inaccurate, but as a social structure, it is a brilliant, highly effective survival hack. Imagine living in a harsh jungle environment. Disease, predators, and accidents are constant threats. A child with only one father relies on just one provider. If that one father gets injured, falls ill, or is eaten by a jaguar, the child and the mother are left with absolutely nothing. They are completely vulnerable. But a child with 3 recognized fathers has an evolutionary insurance policy. If one father is gone, the child still has 2 men biologically obligated to feed it. If one father has a bad hunting day, another father might bring back meat. Anthropological studies on the Bari tribe revealed something astonishing. Children with multiple recognized fathers actually have significantly higher survival rates. They receive more protein, more protection, and more care. So for tens of thousands of years, sharing fatherhood was not a scandal. It was a feature, not a bug. It kept the tribe alive. Paternal uncertainty wasn't a problem to be solved. It was a tool to be used. But then, human history took a massive turn. Something happened that destroyed this flexible system forever. That something happened roughly 12,000 years ago. Historians call it the Neolithic Revolution, but we know it better as the invention of agriculture. Farming changed every single aspect of human biology and psychology. Before farming, humans were nomadic. We wandered constantly, owning nothing but what we could carry on our backs. The tribe was a collective. Food was shared. Property barely existed. But the moment we put seeds in the ground, everything shifted. We became tied to a single piece of land. We built permanent homes and walls. We learned to accumulate surplus grain and domesticate livestock. We began to own things. Wealth was born. And with wealth came a completely new, massive human problem. The problem of inheritance. Imagine a prehistoric farmer who has spent his entire life working. He has cleared land, bred cows, and built a massive pile of wealth. As he grows old, he faces a dilemma. He thinks, I do not want to pass my hard work down to a stranger. I definitely do not want to pass it down to the neighbor's kid. I want to pass it to my kid, my direct bloodline. Suddenly, the Amazonian-style shared fatherhood became an unacceptable risk. Sharing paternity was fine when everyone was equally poor. It was a disaster when you owned a farm. The rise of agriculture made biological certainty the most valuable commodity on Earth. And so, human societies invented strict new rules to guarantee it. This is the exact moment in history when strict monogamy becomes the global standard. To guarantee who the biological father was, society realized it had to control the mother. Female sexuality became heavily regulated, tracked, and judged. The nuclear family structure was literally born from the need to protect a man's property rights. Marriage was no longer just a loose social ritual. It became a rigid legal, economic, and biological contract. Adultery became far more than a simple moral transgression. For women, it was legally treated as a crime against property. It was viewed as an attempt to introduce alien blood into a family's bank account. It was the end of evolutionary uncertainty and the start of strict surveillance. Evolutionary psychology shows the scars of this transition today. Studies show men and women experience jealousy differently. Women tend to fear emotional infidelity, the loss of the man's resources. Men, however, are statistically more terrified of sexual infidelity. Because of that ancient, lingering dread of paternal uncertainty, the fear of raising another man's genes and giving him your farm. We traded the village insurance policy of collective dads for the single, fragile promise of one biological father. So, how did ancient humans know who the father was? In the pre-agricultural collective tribes, they didn't know for sure. And more importantly, they did not care. In a small hunter-gatherer band of 30 to 50 people, everyone was related anyway. The genetic differences were minimal. All men in the generation above were socially considered dad. Fatherhood was not a strict biological limitation. It was a broad, supportive social role. The entire village was responsible for the child, because the survival of the whole group depended on the next generation surviving. Today, we look at a DNA test result with immense relief. We finally solved the biological problem that farming created. We can watch reality TV shows where people cry over swab results. We now know the truth, with absolute 99.9% certainty. But focusing so much on the biology made us forget the original human hack, the ancient wisdom that kept our species alive for millennia. We forgot that fatherhood is a spectrum of actions, not just a sequence of genes. A DNA test can tell you who provided the sperm, but it cannot tell you who actually acts like a father. A father is the one who provides resources when the child is vulnerable. A father is the one who stays awake during the dangerous night. A father is the one who shows the child how to survive the world, whether that world is an ancient jungle or a modern city. Our brains were forged in small collective tribes where everyone showed up, where belonging was based on effort, not exact genetic matching. The ancient African proverb, "It takes a village to raise a child," is not a cute metaphor. It is the literal description of how we lived for 99% of our history. So, next time you are trying to figure out who a father is, look past the biology. Try the oldest, most reliable test in the human playbook. Do not look at a piece of laboratory paper. Look at the man who has the messy hair from not sleeping enough. Look at the man who is actively teaching, guiding, and protecting. Look at the man who chose to stay when things got difficult. The actions of a good father today are exactly the same as they were 50,000 years ago. They might be wearing different clothes. They might be holding a baby bottle instead of a wooden spear. The technology has changed. The society has changed. But the core definition of the role has never shifted. Because biological fatherhood is a relatively modern obsession, driven by land, property, and agricultural wealth. But social fatherhood? Social fatherhood is a foundational, ancient human truth. A father isn't necessarily the person you share DNA with. A father is the person who decides to be one. A father is simply the one who is there. "I love you, Dad,"